Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. I've got a question for you. What do you buy if you fancy a Bentley Continental GT, but you're worried it might be a bit too soft for you, a bit too Freemason friendly? Well, I think I've got the answer. You see, in 2009, Bentley announced they were going to make a limited number of swivel-eyed, unhinged versions of their popular Grand Tourer. Perfect if your garage walls are lined with padding, and the locks on the outside rather than the inside. You can see what they've done. They've made it meaner and more menacing, and they've given it a lot more power. So much power, in fact, that at the time of production, this was the fastest and most powerful production Bentley ever made. Styling-wise, everything that was once golf club friendly chrome was now blacked out, or murdered out, as I think I've heard it referred to. They've obviously kept the same distinctive shape, but it's gone from soft and approachable to back off or I'll hurt you. It has extra vents on the bonnet just to warn you not to get too close, or else it could bite. The rear lights are subtly tinted to make it look a little more stealthy. The wheels are lighter and blacked out. Under the aggressive bonnet is the same 6-litre W12, only it's been fed more protein. And it now produces, and I couldn't quite believe this when I first read it, 621 brake horsepower. You know, just in case the 550 you get in the standard model isn't quite enough for you. And the result is ridiculous. That's insane. That is absolutely ridiculous. And because it's four-wheel drive, it puts all the power down. There wasn't even a twinge then of me losing grip. If I were in an XKR or an AMG GT and I did that, I'd now be facing the wrong way, and I'd have to nip home for clean underpants. This big hefty car can go from 0 to 60 in just 3.7 seconds, and 0 to 100 in under 9. When you plant your foot into the shag pile, everything around you just turns into a blur. This car puts its power down better than almost anything I've ever driven. It has a top speed of 204 miles an hour. 204! It isn't just the engine they've tweaked, they've also had to play around with the gearbox. It's basically the same 6-speed ZF box as found in the regular Continental, only this one changes up to 50% faster, and it'll also double downshift. They also put the Bentley on a diet, and unlike most diets, this one actually worked. This is a whopping 110 kilos lighter than the standard GT. I mean, it still weighs 2.25 tons. Good job then this car comes with carbon ceramic brakes as standard. It's been a good few months since I last drove a Continental. Remember, you mustn't call it a Conti. But I'd say this definitely feels sharper and tighter. The steering feels much more precise. In fact, the whole car just feels much more hunkered down. Usually when a car manufacturer makes a car sportier and faster, it's at the expense of the ride quality. Well, I can honestly say this one doesn't feel any more uncomfortable than a standard GT. It's still a joy to be in. This might not be the best way to describe a Bentley Continental GT, but for me it always feels like if Range Rover were to make a Grand Tourer. I honestly expected this Supersports to feel too stiff and jarring, and that really isn't the case. Inside, again, it's typical Bentley. It's a bit like being sat in Lord Lucan's study. And a bit like Lord Lucan, this can disappear in the blink of an eye. You just can't get your head around how quick this car is. I can't tell you my speed there because not only would I lose my license, I think I'd end up doing some time inside. Hope they're not coming for me. The more time you spend inside a Bentley, the more you appreciate all the finer details. Everything's handcrafted and hand-stitched. And there are some subtle differences inside the Supersports. Take, for example, the seats. The standard leather seats are gone, and they've been replaced with these carbon fibre shells. And they're trimmed with this beautiful quilted Alcantara. The whole thing's just lovely. I'm guessing Alcantara's lighter than leather, but having never weighed them both, I can't give you a definitive answer. And I mean, look at the stitching on the door cards. Everything's just exquisite. The seats are extremely comfortable and supportive. They're not cramped like a 911. You often see people on Instagram talking about their dream two-car garage, and for me it would be a full-size Range Rover, surprise, surprise, and a Bentley Continental GT. One area that does let the side down though is the ancient infotainment system. Yes, it has Bluetooth hands-free, but it doesn't have Bluetooth media streaming. And yes, it has a reverse camera, but it's like going back to the early days of digital cameras back in the early 2000s. I think this is really going to be an issue for future classics going forward. This kind of mid-2000s era car is really hindered and dated by the infotainment systems. And I'm not sure what the solution is either. When you start to push this around bends, it really doesn't feel like you're in something that weighs 2.25 tons. Feels surprisingly nimble. It's a feat of engineering, this car, it really is. Because this is a post-2009 model, you get this nice new upgraded steering wheel, rather than the old steering wheel that you get in the early models, which was straight from a Touareg. As much as I'm a fan of the Bentley Continental GT, I didn't really expect to be so enamoured by the Supersports. One thing I really love about the Supersports is its name. Can you imagine that at a party? What is it you drive then? I drive a Bentley Supersports. Huh? Splendid. To own a Bentley, you're in an exclusive little club. But to own a Supersports, you're the 1% of the 1%. It's not all good news though, because all that extra speed and performance does come at the expense of fuel economy. Now the standard GT isn't what you'd call frugal. In fact, if you ever own one, you'll try and justify it by saying, well, it'll do 14 miles per gallon, but you know, it's a Bentley, what do you expect? It's just part and parcel of owning an expensive luxury coupe. This is what you tell yourself to make yourself feel better. You'll probably do what I do and say, well, it's not great on fuel, but you know, I don't do many miles anyway. That old chestnut. Well, the Supersports will test your resolve even further. How does 11 miles per gallon sound around town? It's pitiful, isn't it? On the bright side, on a steady motorway run, I guess because it's slightly lighter and the gearbox is slightly better, you will do 23, 24 miles per gallon, which isn't too bad, is it, while you're on your way to Val d'Isère or Saint-Tropez? And if you do find yourself doing that journey, you'll be able to take with you as much luggage as you want, because the boot's huge. And it has a power boot lid. So it is a car that's reassuringly expensive to run. The road tax is reassuringly expensive too, it's £630 a year. Or as Eon now describe it, 1 month's estimated gas and electricity. It's no secret that I love these cars. I love the fact that when you've done well in life, you can treat yourself to such a machine. I was having this chat with a mate of mine recently, and yes, I know this kind of car is a little bit excessive and a little bit vulgar, but I just wouldn't want to live in a world where high-end cars like this weren't allowed. There's got to be some sort of reward for hard work and stress and determination. I mean, if you're a bit of a Corbynista, you'll detest this car's very existence. Like I say, I love the fact that we live in a country where with a little bit of cash, you can own something like this. Speaking of which, it doesn't even take that much cash. You can pick up used Supersports from around 35 grand, which is only around 6 or 7 grand more than a standard GT. In my mind, that's a premium worth paying. And because they're rare, they should depreciate, I mean, when they get to this level, much more slowly. You'll always have something that's a bit more special, a bit less run-of-the-mill. It feels weird describing a standard GT as run-of-the-mill, but I think you know what I mean. You might think I've lost the plot here, but I genuinely think it represents good value for money. I mean, what other four-wheel drive car can you buy that's capable of 204 miles an hour for about 35 grand? You can't. If you compare this to something like an Aston Martin DBS, which is a very similar thing, and they were similarly priced when new, this is almost half the price used. If you have a look on Auto Trader, used DBSs sit at around 70 grand, which is twice the price of this car. And is it twice the car? I don't think so. There we go then. If you woke up today wondering what to do with the £40,000 that you've amassed under your mattress, hopefully I've helped you. You can thank me below in the comments. Cheers guys, I'll see you next time.